For more, let's bring in Chicago Alderman and former Chicago police officer Anthony Napolitano, along with former acting ICE director Jonathan Fahey. Great to see both of you.
Hey,
Anthony,
Mr. Fahey.
I am always astonished at how these liberal leaders try to frame this as some sort of, to use the word that I used earlier, some sort of tyranny, but they never, ever talk about or think about crime victims. They never talk about or think about the law-abiding citizens whose lives and livelihoods are at risk because they fail to fight crime at every blink of an eye.
Yeah, you know, I agree with you 1,000%. And the guest you had on, Mrs. Truss, she spoke words of wisdom. Those are our residents. They want more police here. They want the federal government to step in. And what our local government doesn't do is they don't use facts. If you take the last 2 years, we've had 4,286 people shot in the city of Chicago. That's
4,000 people shot. Did you hear the man?
a ridiculous number to have. We have a gang problem here. A local statistician, M3 Strategies, has pointed out that 51% of Chicagoans think that our gangs are the biggest problem in our city. Not the water, not the air, not traffic, nothing else but our gang problems. That's a staggering statistic. It's hypocrisy because our politicians here are always putting politics and agenda over people in the city of Chicago, and it's wrong. And people are suffering. As Chicagoans are suffering.
Okay, Jonathan, there clearly is going to be a large number of residents who want more cops on the street, whether they're federal or local, who want that police presence. But obviously, long tradition in law of limits on federal power. Do you think the strategy here is to
This is a capital thing that needs to be pointed out. People constantly forget about the victims. The people that are really suffering, the people that had to plan the funeral because their son, who was not a gangbanger, was walking down the street to school and a random bullet flew into that child. People forget about this part. Chicago has always been a city that has not really been 2A friendly. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because I personally believe when people have the ability to fight back, the conversation tends to be a little bit more polite. People bully the person who they think doesn't have the ability to defeat them. But when they have someone that can be their equal match or who they know will likely defeat them, they tend to approach that person with a different level of humbleness and meekness. Just in my opinion.
Pressure the governor and the mayor to invite federal presence in, or I'm thinking D.C. is a federal district. In L.A., you had people impeding ICE. If Pritzker and Johnson don't say, please come in, President Trump, what is the authority?
Well, there's a lot of authority to enforce federal criminal law that they already have. And you talk about all of these shootings and murders in Chicago. A lot of those could also be federal gun crimes, depending on the circumstances. So they're gun offenses, they're
Look at all that Democrat establishment. All of that you see right there is Democratic establishment. I don't know all of the faces there, but I know the lady that's sitting to the right of Pritzker is Tammy Duckworth. Been around a long time. The white gentleman that's to the left of Mayor Johnson, that's Father Flagan, I believe that's his name. He's been an activist in the black community for a very long time. He gained his popularity because he's known to preach more along the lines of what you would find in a black church. The people in his church tend to shout and have a lot of the same behaviors that's known in the black church. So he's been around, I want to say since the 90s. I know that for a fact. Most of these people, almost none of them are Republican.
drug offenses. There are things like immigration offenses. All are federal offenses that you could bring in federal officers.
What I'm pointing out is just how the establishment and the Democratic political machine runs in Chicago. It's been gerrymandered to the point where only one voice is heard in the state. But the trade-off is, if you look at the map of Illinois, Almost 70% of the state is Republican. Unfortunately, Chicago gets all the voter rights because it brings in most of the income for the state. That's just how it is.
For which, if you surge them, you can make a huge difference in a short period of time, as you've seen in D.C., although D.C. is different, as you said. But
the lady in the red jacket, I recognize her. I think that's the lieutenant governor.
You know, I think the residents, and even the residents that won't say they want it, they actually want it. But you look at Governor Pritzker, his only motivation, like your other guest said, is only politics, because in the Democratic Party, to ascend in the Democratic Party, you have to be full on open borders immigration, and you have to oppose everything Donald Trump does.
God damn it. He just went and had to say it. I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to a lot of these Democratic policies of today, I do not like green eggs and ham. I will not eat them on a boat. I will not eat them with a goat. I do not like green eggs and ham. Sam, I am.
And that will have him ascend. If he has to run on his record as a governor, he's done. And so he's kind of an easy read on this. But when Donald Trump goes in there and people get safer, not only will people in Chicago and Illinois notice, but people around the country will notice, and it'll really smoke out a lot of these Democrats that have been ignoring the crime problem for far too long.
I'm going to step out of my bias for a second. If Pritzker was smart, the best political strategy would actually to allow the National Guard to come in. That way he would have political currency when he runs, because he could say, I worked with Trump and it didn't work. I worked with Trump to make the city better for the people and he resisted against me, or whatever you want to say. Or what he can do is make himself look like the better man and say, hey, crime was controlled under Trump. I was wrong. He got it right. It shows that me as a Democrat can work with a Republican and swallow the bitter pill to improve the life of all Chicagoans in Illinois. That would be the better strategic play. Yeah, for right now, people would be pissed off because they would feel like he caved. People's memories are short. You have to remind them of a thing all the time. But this would be political currency in his pocket, because it would say he's more rational and sensible. But see, he's responding to the Democratic base because they're saying, I don't care what it is, just fight Trump at all cases, at all turns. So now he's in a position where he's probably fighting where he doesn't want to fight, because he wants to be the guy that just says, I was the guy that resisted Trump. I fought Trump and won. It's not the right move, it's not the better play, but that's the move he's making.
John, let me just stay with you on that, because when you talk about gun crimes, you are talking about, say, federal racketeering RICO investigations. If it's gang activity, we're talking about gang murders. Those are heavy-duty sentences at the federal level. So that would open the door for federal intervention. But what we did hear from Tom Homan today in Washington, D.C., that preparations are underway for an immigration crackdown in Chicago. And the Chicago police superintendent said he will not direct his officers to obstruct a potential federal crackdown on the streets, and expressed some hope that communication with his department could lower the tensions in a city already on edge.
I get that having the National Guard on the ground is visually jarring. It makes you feel that martial law is being enacted. But we're at an extreme cross measure. People are dying in the street. Gang violence is rampant in Chicago. What do you do here? Because what you've currently been doing is not working at all. It's not working. But you want to keep fighting and bucking the system. And then you have CPD officers that's WTFing. Did we not forget there were 2,000 police officers short in Chicago? You think that's not by design? You think that attrition happened just because CPD wanted it to happen? You think ShotSpotter went away simply because it was a funding issue? I think if you actually set term limits, a lot of this would be alleviated, because you have a lot of Democrats and Republicans. They're stuck and set in their ways. I'm not saying some of the traditional ways don't work. They're so set in their ways they can't see the trees falling in the forest. It becomes a snake eating its own tail. They don't know who else to fight, so they just fight themselves. This is one of the reasons why Nadler of New York is stepping aside and he's not going to run again. Because he sees his time is gone. He wants to give it to some new blood to keep the Democratic Party running strong. I think the National Guard should come to Chicago, even if it's only for 30 days. I do. I think Mayor Brandon Johnson is worse than Lori Lightfoot. I thought it couldn't get any worse than Lori Lightfoot. Lori Lightfoot looks like an amateur because the way Brandon Johnson moves, it looks like he's a pawn. People are always being used in the political strata, but this looks very blatant. When someone is sitting right in your face and telling you, you don't see what you're seeing. Brandon Johnson got out here and protested, trying to get the people worked up about not accepting the National Guard coming to Chicago. I've never seen that man get that active when it comes to protesting. Most of the times when he holds a forum, he doesn't even have the respect to listen to the people at the podium. But I tell you what he did do. He definitely learned to listen when it was time to move that budget up because of the illegal immigration issue. That's what he did.
I do love, this is the Chicago Tribune, like they're writing about tensions, not actual crime.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that, and I do think the police on the ground are welcoming ICE and welcoming federal agents because they work together and they want to solve these problems. And going after the immigration offenses, it's a great way to get rid of gang members. And like you said, these racketeering offenses, Vicar offenses, other types of things have stiff penalties and enable the feds to get lots of dangerous people locked up, put in jail, or removed from the country. So this will be a great thing for Chicago. And unfortunately, Governor Pritzker just doesn't really know what to do because once it works out well, what is he going to say?
All right, and Anthony,
I told you what he can say. I told you exactly what he can say. One thing Rahm Emanuel was good at, he knew how to take an accidental cause and turn it to his benefit to make it appear as if he was the mastermind behind that particular issue the entire time. He was very great with doing that. That's why I said if Pritzker was smart, he could take and turn this to his benefit. If he was to just say, I know you guys don't like the fact and it seems like I bent the knee to Trump, but crime dropped and it worked. This is one of the few times I want to show that we as Democrats can be the bigger person. And then villainize the other side to make it seem like they bullied you into doing it. You didn't like it, but you went on, conceded it. It worked out, but you showed that you were still the rational person in the end. Then, once you get in the seat, you become the bull in the haberdashery. People are like, well, don't do that because Trump doesn't care about any of that. He isn't a respect. He's running rampshot over everything. That's true. That's what you get to do when you're the president.
sounds like federal law enforcement.
Pause. Okay. A lot of you are saying, well, why do that? Because Trump isn't respecting it now. He's running rampshot as a bull in a haberdashery right now, which is true, but he's doing it in a way that was asked by the voters to do so. The thing was, when you see the visual of it, you don't like it. But just because something is uncomfortable does not mean you should not do it.
ICE, FBI, et cetera, is probably going to be more helpful and trained for this than some kind of military presence in Chicago.
Yeah, you know, any help's gonna. Everything that we can get over here is going to help. Look at it this way: our mayor has a service around him of police officers, about 150. Chicago police officers are guarding our mayor. Even if you bring in federal help.
Did you hear that, man? There's 150 officers guarding the mayor. 150. 150. Do you not see now why this man speaks the way that he speaks, Mayor Johnson? Because he doesn't have the cares and concerns of the everyday citizen.
To take over that aspect of it, you can put our officers back on the street fighting crime. That's the way to utilize this.
There you go.
There's different ways that we can do this.
There you
our
go.
Men and women, our police officers, our men and women are well trained to do this. We're just suffering a lack of about 3,000 more officers on the street than we should have. Bring in the feds. We need all the help we can. Don't listen to the politicians. It's hypocrisy because they don't want to see the president succeed with cleaning up big crime in Chicago that they couldn't clean up for the last 8 years. 19,422 people shot in the last 7 years in Chicago.
It's like the more I listen to the video, the worse the stats get. It's like the stats are competing with a hold my beer contest. 20,000, almost 20,000 people shot in 7 years. That's not even numbers that was taking place in Iraq in 7 years. I mean, the legit war in Iraq. But we have 20,000 people shot in 7 years. But hey, crime is down 33% as of right now, huh?
Staggering stats.
This is a way for the politicians to get more money because the federal resources are doing some of the law enforcement that frees up resources for other things. Right?
Yeah, but that's what they want. I was listening to the governor of Maryland saying, we just need more money. And they talk about ghost guns. It's the same tired pablum over and over again. Anthony Napolitano and Jonathan Fahey, great to see both of you.
I am completely on board. It's nothing but deflection with Pritzker and Johnson. That's all it is. It's just complete deflection. A part of me says, I get it. People have the right to vote in their own personal interest. The other part of me says, some of these people are morons and they need to have their voting rights taken away. Some of these people are just morons. Some people will vote against their best interests, even if it would save the lives of many. The Democratic machine is a political hound. It never stops. There is no sleep. There's no off button for it. This is why you get the dogmatic nature of politics in Chicago. But these are things that constantly reinforce to the Chicago people that their lives is nothing more than political dice. All the Democrats are trying to do is keep rolling and make sure they don't get snake eyes. I'm not saying if there's a bunch of Republicans that got in the seat, they would make the city better because there's a lot of rot in the politics of Chicago. Personally, I think you should get rid of the alderman system. Not very many cities even use an alderman system anymore. I'll give you an example of how the alderman system works in Chicago. Let's say you have a restaurant and you want to enhance the ambiance of that restaurant, and there's a low traffic street right next to you that you want to put in a permit to have the street closed off so you could put some restaurant chairs in the middle of the street so people could eat in the middle of the street to take in the ambiance of the traffic that's flowing around them in the city of Chicago. You have to ask an alderman for that right to do that. You can't just put the chairs out there. The alderman does not need the approval of the mayor or the city to grant it. That alderman and alderman alone can say yes or no. On top of that, that alderman can also run to be in the zoning commission, which means he can be the one that grants the zoning permit and gives you the permission for what you can and can't do with your particular business in the city of Chicago. Aldermen pretty much are mouthpieces that are not House of Representatives per se, or congressmen, but they hold sway in the political office for the mayor. There's supposed to be a checks and balances on the mayor, but if everyone's a Democrat there and everyone is in agreement there, how far does that really go? Guys, that's the video. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Let me know how you feel about this situation. Do you feel that the crackdown in Chicago, as far as the crime is concerned, is a very real problematic issue? Or do you feel it's fine, don't bring the National Guard, CPD can handle it? Do you feel it would be a bad idea if Pritzker asked Trump to send in the National Guard? Or do you think that he's just so caught up in his ego, it's not worth the breath and it's just blowing hot air? Jump in the comment section. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Guys, I'll catch you in the next one. It's about to get hot.